Yeah, I was getting worried along with you. I mean, we've rarely seen over the past year, almost 2 years, points in which this bright green line has gone down. And when it does, it usually takes the prices with it pretty quickly. But this was the turning point about 3 weeks ago where things quickly started to recover, and only a matter of time, especially right here, when we bottomed out on March 9th.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and joining me is Brian from Sentiment. And as you all know, we are going to break down the metrics around Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP, and what's happening in the markets, guys. We're going to look at the data. Brian, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, Tony. It's looking a lot better now compared to about a week and a half ago when things were pretty grim. But we've had a nice rebound crypto-wide, and I'm excited to talk some numbers.
So, Brian, isn't it funny? You know, we've been on this theme of going against the herd, right? The herd, the market does the opposite of the herd. And we saw a lot of people were bearish, right? Down in the dumps, depressed. And all of a sudden, the market is having a rally. Now, this could be just a relief rally, but again, the market doing the opposite of the herd and the sentiment, which we've been tracking.
Exactly right. Yeah, we saw 1.5 to 2 weeks ago, we were seeing some of the most bearish signs from the crowd that we've seen in some time, even though the metrics on chain were looking fine for most assets. It was just a matter of kind of waiting out this retrace that had been going on since the Trump inauguration back in mid-January. So now that we've seen a bit of a recovery, the question is, have we swung the other direction? And is there now a bunch of euphoria and people talking about, going all in once again?
Absolutely. So let's start with Bitcoin, as we usually do, and start looking at the sentiment around Bitcoin and what people are saying. And this way we can use that as a measuring stick to get an idea how the crowd's feeling, and we'll look at whale activity and things like that.
Totally. Okay, so looking at the price action really quick, we do see that, we have this new Trump meme coin that's kind of dwarfing the axis, but you can see all these tiny little green spots that are indicating that everything else is, or most everything else is up money over the past week. Bitcoin up about 7.5%, Ethereum up 10%. We've talked in previous episodes, Tony, about how Ethereum was one of the biggest underperformers of the past year or so, and people were really starting to write it off and calling it overrated, and Vitalik doesn't know what he's doing, all sorts of narratives going around, but Ethereum's made a nice recovery. And in general, we've seen a nice rebound among most large cap, mid cap assets. The overall market cap is pretty even, only up about 0.1%, but we do see trader volume overall up about 9%. And if we move over to Bitcoin specifically, we aren't seeing anything special going on utility wise. Transaction volume is actually kind of declining over the past month. Active addresses, circulation, even those are down a tiny bit here. But what I do think is important is that we look at the average returns right now, because this is reflective of what your peers are doing and how they're performing right now, to give us an idea of what an actual buy low versus a sell high opportunity looks like right now. And obviously the big buy low spot was about 2 weeks ago, March 10th. We were hitting that 78K level for a second time. And during this spot, we saw that the average returns for wallets active over the past 30 days was down about 7%, 13%, and long-term wallets were down about 7%. So when you see both the short and long-term well below zero, that's generally a great buy time, and this was a perfect signal. Now, we've run things back up where both the short and long-term wallets on average are in the positive again. Not by much, not in a scary zone whatsoever, but wallets in the past 30 days are up about 3.5%. Past year, they're up about 4.5%. We've seen several times where they've both gotten way into double digits, and we aren't even close to that right now. So consider us kind of in a neutral territory right now, meaning you'd be buying or adding onto your position right now at a pretty neutral spot compared to the entire history of Bitcoin existing.
Interesting. So I know seasonality wise with the stock market and crypto, April, May, June are usually good months, and then you have the summer lull. Sell in May and go away is usually the saying, right? So nothing guaranteed here, but could this be the start of that next rally upwards, right? Where maybe Bitcoin goes to new highs and then pulls altcoins for the next phase up, like we had the run up in Q4, we had the correction in Q1, and now come Q2 is the next run up.
I could see it. Yeah. I mean, seasonality, I always take with a grain of salt because I just don't think, even with crypto existing for about 16 years, I don't think we have nearly enough of a sample size to deduce that these months are always good, these months are always bad. There's been a lot of coincidences and circumstances that have made like November an amazing month for crypto and January not so good of a month. But generally, the start of each quarter, there's some argument that there's some extra capital being put in every January, April, July, and October. And that can have positive impacts on prices. And we're about 6 days away from April 1st hitting, and that means we have new whales and large capital investors injecting some money, shuffling their money around, things like that. So I could see it for sure. But from a raw math perspective, I like to just see, how good are investors doing with their average portfolios, regardless of the timing of the month or the week or the year. And this shows that we're just slightly above water right now when looking at other traders and how they've been profiting as of late.
Yeah, for sure. And great point on the seasonality, because there are no guarantees, and it doesn't mean that past performance is an indicator of future and that it must play out that way. But as you say, though, we look at the different pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, to make sure our thesis is as close to accurate as possible. And using the data is of course, a strong indicator. So you mentioned whales, or you may have some other data here before we look at whales.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention funding rate actually looks pretty healthy right now. There's, especially on Binance, there's a healthy amount of shorting that are being sprinkled in here as the funding rate data comes out. Ever since March hit, we were getting quite a bit of bias toward people trying to profit off of Bitcoin dropping in value. And that usually is a good thing if you're bullish, because whatever direction traders are tending to skew, exchanges are constantly looking to find ways to liquidate those biases. So when we're super long, like we were back here in mid-January as Trump was getting inaugurated, those longs got liquidated and sent prices way down, and it just continued down with the momentum and large capital investors taking some profit. And then we got here in the first week of March, and suddenly there's a bunch of shorts getting liquidated. It temporarily sent prices up, and we've kind of ranged ever since. And we were correlated with the S&P 500, which I'll get to later in the call. So right now, yeah, we're seeing a little bit of shorting right there. And that's a good sign, because we kind of bounced right off of that red bar and have been going up a little bit ever since, back up above 88K for the first time in about a little over 2 weeks.
And then I know usually it gets to a point when the shorts build up or the longs build up, right? There's usually a reversal, a liquidation, right? It's funny.
Exactly.
Works. And it's so good to like look at this data so you can see, oh, wow, there's a buildup of a ton of shorts. Maybe there's a short squeeze coming up if other factors align. And likewise, if there's a lot of longs, what might be coming, as we saw kind of like in January, right? In February, a lot of longs liquidated.
That's exactly right. So with shorts being sprinkled in, we're hoping that they continue to contribute to the positive price momentum we've been seeing. Now, on the whale side of things, we're seeing plenty of whale transactions still going on. There has been a decline since the end of February, but we do see this uptick that just happened a couple days ago. And this appeared to be accumulation. And if we take a look at this chart, which we've gone over in most of our shows, Tony, we do see that the bright green line here is moving up. This is representing the amount of Bitcoin held by wallets with at least 10 BTC in them. So ever since this little profit take that we saw from mid-February to about early March, they've actually accumulated pretty well, adding about 11,211 BTC over the past 3 weeks. Meanwhile, some people say, especially when you look at wallets that hold over 10,000 Bitcoin, which is a pretty unfathomable number, those are mostly held by exchanges. And we've seen that the wallets specifically holding between 10 to 10,000, which is excluding some of those huge exchange wallets in this bright green line, even this dark green line is starting to rise again, representing the 10 to 10K wallets. And right when we started to really get momentum and go into the high 80Ks, it was boosted by the fact that these middle tier 10 to 10K wallets were really starting to accumulate once again, and they're holding the most they have in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, Brian, I was looking at this chart over the past month, and I have to say I was getting a bit nervous because I'm like, are these whales done, right? Is this the end of it? Because if this is a true downtrend of them not accumulating anymore, I need to start panic. Well, I shouldn't say panic, but I need to start prepping for, okay, something's different. But it's good to see some recovery here. That's a healthy sign, and it wasn't a true downtrend.
Exactly. Yeah, I was getting worried along with you. I mean, we've rarely seen over the past year, almost 2 years, points in which this bright green line has gone down. And when it does, it usually takes the prices with it pretty quickly. But this was the turning point about 3 weeks ago where things quickly started to recover, and only a matter of time, especially right here, when we bottomed out on March 9th, the fact that we had already been starting to move back up, even though the price was doing, from that exact date, doing that, right? That's called a bullish divergence. When you see whales moving up, but prices moving down, that should be a signal to you that maybe Bitcoin is starting to get a bit undervalued compared to what the largest key stakeholders are trying to do with the big picture.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Great insight. And then on the stablecoin front, what are you seeing as far as Tether supply on exchanges?
So Tether is still moving down. Not a lot of dry powder on exchanges compared to what we were seeing about a month and a half ago. There was about, if we're talking specifically about the top exchange wallets, basically the top 10, there was about $45.49 billion worth of Tether during the first week of February. Now there's 40.64. So pretty sizable drop. USD coin does look a little bit better. It actually really jumped up here on March 21st, 22nd, 23rd before coming back down. But we'd still like to see some improvement from the stable coins, especially the top wallets and how much they're holding, because that liquidity can really help fuel a lot of rallies because of how much buying power there is on exchanges.
Interesting. I know there's like people track, I think, Tether dominance and even Bitcoin dominance. So it's fascinating. I personally don't know. I'm not as well educated as some analysts, as far as the correlation. I know it's like if that supply starts to pretty much break down, it means more coins are theoretically going into Bitcoin and the crypto market. But I'm not fully, I can't say that with 100% confidence because I'm not fully educated on that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a loose correlation. I do believe there's something there, but I certainly don't recommend trading just based on the raw amount of Tether versus the raw amount of Bitcoin on a particular exchange. I think that's, exchanges have their own functions and reasonings for adding more stables for liquidity purpose or taking some away. And you have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. In general, it's still good to see, rising Tether on exchanges over time. But if it falls like this, it isn't necessarily a sign that there won't be enough stable coins for people to, use for their trades and whatever they're requesting. especially when a lot of these are coming from like the top exchanges like Binance for Tether and USD Coinbase for USD coin.
Yeah, great point. Because believe it or not, for some who are listening, Tether and stablecoins are used for payments and other things people use to get yield and so forth. And then there's sometimes burning, right, depending on what the individual or institution is doing. So it's
exactly
hard. Yeah. Interesting. Any other Bitcoin metrics you want to share?
There was one other one that I think is worth watching, and that's the total amount of holders. We do see that retail traders since February 18th, roughly 5 weeks ago, they have gone up by about 374,000 non-empty wallets. So they're, even despite all of this volatility that's happened in the past 5 weeks, the overall network appears to be growing, which is overall a pretty good sign. It does indicate there isn't a ton of fear. I'd love to see if a bunch of retail traders really thinking that prices are going to go down, because that's when we typically see the biggest bull rallies. But the network does seem to be growing rather quickly, and especially a couple days ago when we were at 54.8 million non-empty wallets. If we go back in time, we're pretty much at the highest point ever in terms of non-empty wallets. You can see it really, really grew from 2019 to 24. And then there was this interesting flat line that's kind of happened ever since June of last year. So the growth is a little bit slower. And you can see during this rally, when the growth was slowing, this was from a lot of retail traders just taking profit on the way up, not thinking we'd go all the way up to 109K like we did. But now that prices have retraced, we're still seeing the network grow, but on a slower rate compared to what we saw 3 to 5 years ago.
Interesting. All right, let's move to Ethereum, and let's take a look at what is happening with ETH. There's been a lot of adoption news with folks building on ETH, but ETH still continues to suffer from a price standpoint. I do think it will catch up, especially as staking is added to the ETF and much more. But what are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, Ethereum's had a nice week. It's up about 10% as we saw over the last week. And even though utility doesn't appear to be anything special right now, with transaction volume, active addresses, and circulation all going down, there are some good long-term signs. Obviously, because it's been such an underperformer over the past year, wallets are still down on average about 29%. That's way below what we see for Bitcoin and Solana and XRP. So in terms of just a regression to the mean viewpoint, there's some argument that Ethereum could be still one of the better bets for a bit of a rebound later in 2025, assuming that Bitcoin can start to really get its legs. And even the 30-day wallets are still down just slightly. So I like how the MVRV looks a lot for Ethereum in particular. This is one of the strongest bullish signals I'm seeing for it right now. And then also funding rate. Plenty of shorts that are being sprinkled in here over the past couple weeks. We do see that we're a little closer to neutral normally, or right now on Binance, but look for big short spikes like this as a good sign that liquidations can occur and send prices really soaring quickly if the negativity starts to creep in again for the number 2 asset.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe there could be a catalyst. Like I've been hearing rumors from the SEC that they may add staking in the Ethereum ETFs, and that big players like Fidelity and others have been filing for that. So could that be a catalyst to send it up and help it get some strength from a sentiment standpoint? Maybe, but we'll have to see.
It's a fair point. Any more ETF filings that get approved, or ways for people to invest in Ethereum outside of holding coins on chain, which a lot of people aren't comfortable with, and we have to accept that that reality is a thing. that means that having ETFs is only going to help the cause for Ethereum or the rumored, XRP or Solana ETFs out there, another handful of coins too. Any of these coins that get approved ETFs, it's only going to help the cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at Solana, or unless there's other info here on ETH.
Nothing else on Ethereum. I continue to monitor the sentiment, which we can look at here. In fact, we can check out Ethereum, Bitcoin, and Solana, and we'll do XRP too. So all four of these sentiments for each of them can be found here on this chart. We're just measuring the overall level of positive comments according to our algorithm across social media versus the negative ones, and the ratio specifically between them as a good sign of greed versus fear. So we saw actually just about 3 months ago on Christmas, there was this huge positive sentiment spike. And all it did was really send prices down, which is normal. Meanwhile, when you see some of these negative spikes, it actually can be a good thing. Like right here on February 2nd, when we were bottoming out and seeing Ethereum at 2,500, we saw a pretty decent bounce right after. It didn't last long, but you get the idea. This one as well, there was a bounce right after we really got negative. And now we've seen a few positive spikes. This one on March 19th was followed by a short retrace after people got a bit too excited. And then another one just yesterday, March 24th, very minor retrace. And now we're kind of back in neutral territory. Switching to Bitcoin, it actually looks quite positive right now. Makes sense. We're back at 88K for the first time in about 6 weeks here. I'm sorry, not 6 weeks. I'm reading it wrong. About 3 weeks or so ago. And this positive sentiment is the highest in 6 weeks, indicating that we might be starting to see a little too much FOMO. This is kind of a short-term reaction to seeing finally some positive momentum toward Bitcoin. It doesn't mean Bitcoin can't continue climbing into the 90Ks again, which many people are hoping for, but the amount of retail FOMO looks a bit too high from just a short swing trader perspective.
It's just fascinating. I know I say this like almost a recording. It's just fascinating to look at this data and watch it play out for these assets and understanding the human psychology that's behind it. Maybe I love looking at data and patterns and pattern recognition. It's so fascinating to me.
It is a lot of fun when you really start to understand with every price fluctuation how it really skews people's minds toward a certain expectation just from like a simple price swing. We were so negative just a few weeks ago, and then all of a sudden we get to 88K and suddenly people think Bitcoin's a great investment again. It's just so fascinating.
I don't know if you've seen that meme where there's two guys at a booth, right? And then the herd doesn't go for the lower price. They always line up for the higher price.
Yeah. Or like the exact same price, like 80K in November of 2024. Everyone is incredibly excited and like fanning out their dollars, ready to pay whoever they need to pay. And then 80K in March 2025, everyone is kind of sad and like burying their face in their hands, even though it's literally the exact same market price, but people have different perspectives because it's all based on when they bought in. And obviously 80K in March is a depressing thing for many retailers who were buying in, mid-January at 105, 108K just before Trump got inaugurated, expecting that prices were going to balloon to 150K as soon as he took office. And obviously the opposite came true. So now we're back to playing the longer game, and people are patiently waiting for, Bitcoin to reach those prices again.
All right, let's take a look at Solana and what's happening there. There was some huge news this morning actually about BlackRock expanding their tokenized fund onto the Solana blockchain.
Yep. And you can guess what happens when BlackRock gets involved with Solana and creates that positive news wave. The sentiment just soars. In fact, we're seeing over 10 positive comments across social media for Solana compared to every one negative comment. This is the highest we've seen in a very long time, at least the last 3 months. I'm going back in time to see Yeah, today is the highest positive sentiment day for Solana in at least the past year. I won't bother to go further back, but you get the idea of the magnitude of how much FOMO is going on for this asset right now.
Are you guys tracking Solana like meme coin activity by any chance? Because I know like that aspect of it has really dried up. Any data you can share there?
Yeah, I can go to the social side of things to see how much it's being mentioned. In fact, we'll do two quick searches. We can look at Solana. I'll do the full name as well as the ticker, and then I'll go and meme coins. That's fine. We'll just do meme coins to see how much it's being mentioned alongside meme coins. And just as you would expect, Tony, tons of social volume from late 2024 up until early February. And then it just drops off a cliff as, markets all just plummeted throughout the first half of February, especially.
Yeah, it's interesting because, look, I know there's people who are fans of meme coins. I'm not so much a fan of it, but I do believe, and I think a lot of people agree with me, a lot of liquidity was stolen from other altcoins going into memes on Solana with pump.fun. So
undoubtedly.
There's this like drying out of that market. And look, it will return. I think it'll return as the phase continues in the bull market, but we need the liquidity to go back to Bitcoin and the top holds.
That typically is what needs to happen in the long-term cycle for all markets to go up. Yeah, we need to see meme coiners eventually get wrecked in some capacity, stop believing in meme coins after that, and then meme coins start to pump and we see the profit redistribution from the Bitcoin market cap growth happen all over again and rinse and repeat.
All right, let's take a look at XRP. That's our final one, and then we'll.
I just wanted to check to see how much BlackRock is being mentioned. So yeah, check that spike out. That's today. So clearly that has a lot to do with that sentiment spike we just checked out.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a huge news, huge adoption news.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, it's just a rumor right now, right? There's nothing confirmed yet.
The folks at Securitize, which helped BlackRock to launch it, the tokenized money market fund, they confirmed it.
Okay, that makes sense then. So this isn't just a buy the rumor, sell the news situation. It's confirmed news that can have a long lasting impact. Probably once that FOMO dies down a little bit. You typically don't see huge Solana pumps while everyone retail wise is already expecting Solana to soar. But it'll eventually calm down and then we'll likely see the impact of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then on the XRP side, it doesn't look like there's anything too special going on sentiment wise. It's sitting just slightly with more positive commentary than negative commentary. But XRP has obviously been a huge story for the past 5 months in particular, ever since it went from about 50 cents to where it is now at about 245, jumping about 379% in market cap during that time. So kind of like the opposite of Ethereum, you would expect there's going to be potentially a little regression to the mean because there were already so many people profiting off of that rally. And if we look at MVRV, just like we did for Ethereum, yeah, so all this blue here was off the axis because if you check out the top left of my screen, wallets were up an average of 115%, 120 as I drag left and right, like insanely high numbers, 134% on January 20th, before it finally started to calm down. You don't want to be in an asset when you see extremely high average profits across all the other traders that you are competing against. But now we've calmed down. The average wallets in the past 30 days are actually down about 0.6%. In the past 365 days, they're still up about 42%. I'd love to see that the MVRV drops down to like maybe below 20% for this teal line here. And the orange line maybe gets down to -5, -10%. That would indicate that you're starting to get into a really good buy territory if you're looking for an ideal point to get into XRP.
Interesting. Any other data you think might be worth highlighting here?
The other thing with XRP is the whales are very inactive compared to what we were seeing during these peaks in early February and right before Trump's inauguration. So right now we're only getting maybe like 120-ish wallet or transactions per day that exceed $1 million in value versus about 1,000 to 1,100 wallet transfers that are over $100,000 in value. So compare that to this spike where it was 5,878 100K plus transactions and $762 million plus transactions. So whales are inactive, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're dumping. We can actually look and see like the amount of XRP held by wallets with like at least 1 million XRP. And if we make it a different color than dark gray, there we go. Yeah, I mean, they've continued to climb over time. I'll go back a little bit to like the last 5 years. And you can see the point in which they really reversed direction in December of 2022. They were holding about 41.7 billion then, and they hold 46.4 billion now. So they've really started to increase their bags. In fact, they already have been for about almost 2.5 years now. 11.1% coins, more coins held compared to December of 2022. That's a really nice looking metric for the long-term outlook of XRP.
Interesting. That's definitely a good sign. Actually, as you're, we're talking about XRP, some news just broke from Ripple's chief legal officer that the SEC and Ripple, it's done. It's 100% done. The case is over. Ripple's going to pay $50 million in a fine instead of the 125. So that should probably help. I don't know. It's like we're seeing a lot of bullish news for a lot of coins today.
Yeah, I was actually checking this out earlier today because it's been on and off kind of made official over the past week or two. But XRP's very complex relationship with the SEC has had a lot of price impact over the past couple of years, as you would imagine. So I can compare it directly to price. I'm just putting in XRP anytime it's mentioned with the words SEC or lawsuit. And we can go back, let's just go back to the past year. And you can see the points in which there was news about the SEC or lawsuit. This one was actually a top. I know it's hard to see with this green line, but it kind of halted XRP's rally from last August right there. This one was kind of flat. And then you can see precisely December 1st, when everyone talked about the lawsuit, that marked a top. This one in mid-January marked a top. And then even this latest one from a week ago marked a top. So I'm curious to see whether this has a positive or negative impact on XRP's short-term price. If we judge by history, it actually may cause a slight top. And then after people give up on XRP, that's when the positive effects of this good news really starts to take effect.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Interesting. Brian, as always, my friend, great information, great data. And as I always say, maybe in 2 weeks, next 2 weeks, we are at higher prices. And, if everything goes according to plan, maybe we're hitting new highs come May or June, but we'll have to wait and see how the market plays out.
I'm looking forward to updating in a couple of weeks. And yeah, just like you, we're hoping for the best and we continue to see a nice recovery so we can get back to those January all-time highs.
Oh, for sure.